All right, so we're officially rolling now, and let me pull up our presentation for the day. And since this is going to be on YouTube, I should sound official here and say happy 2022 to the group, since I haven't seen most of you since last year. So I hope everyone had an enjoyable holiday and happy new year, and everyone's staying safe and healthy. So it's good to see the familiar faces back again. And I think we're all, grateful to be here for another year of, partnering and doing some good things in North Lawndale. That's as far as I'll go in my my pep talk here. So I'm going to take a back seat in this one. We got Caroline, Gabby, and Jim. Sorry. Caroline's going to be just talking about the survey that we previously brought up to this group. Gabby, if you choose to go today, be giving an update on the citywide comprehensive plan with We Will Chicago, and then Jim has some slides on the Chicago Recovery Plan grant program. So Caroline, take it away.
Thanks, Brian, and hi everybody. I think I will be preaching to the choir a bit on this group, but just to do another plug, you may recall that I came to Roundtable late last year to talk about this survey, but this is just a first step in kind of reflecting on the roundtables and how they've been going over the last almost 2 years now. It's just a good point to, now that the RFP, sort of the big engagement of that, as Brian said, is sort of in the past. And to really think about how we can proactively make the roundtables really engaging platform for community feedback. So the first step in that is to collect the survey. There will be follow-up steps, including like live conversation sessions to really dig into some of those issues. But we want the survey just to have some baseline understanding of what people think about the roundtables and what some common threads are. So we shared this, I shared the survey at the roundtable last month, and I believe Brian sent it out in emails a couple of times. I know I shared it with you, Rodney, and Jesse from the corridor manager team. So I'm just here to make another plug to fill that out. We've only got about 4 responses from North Lawndale, and so I know a couple more people I know we can get more more responses. So I'll put those links in the chat again right now. Okay. And if you can just pull that up just click the link, have it pulled up on your browser so that it's a reminder to finish it, or do that as we're talking today. It should just be about 10 minutes. And I also want to encourage anyone to send it out to folks who might not have made it to today's meeting, but would still have valuable feedback for the roundtable. Feel free to copy and paste those links. We want as much response as we can. So it's in both Spanish and English. So wherever you or your contacts feel most comfortable filling that in, it's much appreciated. And I do still have kind of paper versions of that survey. If you think somebody would benefit from doing it not on a virtual format, I can send those via email as well. So I'll be on for a couple of minutes if there's questions, but that's my spiel.
Okay.
All right, yeah, thanks, Caroline. I mean, we can take a minute if anybody does want to fill it out, right now. A minute to let everyone pull it up and take a look.
So I just pulled it up, and I'll definitely share it out to see if we can get some more responses for us.
You want us to share it with the community or just our regular network?
Caroline? I mean, I think this would be like,
oh, I'm sorry,
for members of the roundtable, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, whether you've attended one roundtable, every single roundtable, Brian, you can fill this out as the guy who pulls us all together every month. We just want a range of responses. So yes, if you know folks who aren't able to be on today, but have been on at least one roundtable, please do share it. The links will remain open for a few weeks here. Sorry, I was multitasking.
So we'll get it out to some folks in North Lawndale.
Thanks, Rodney. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a group of about maybe like 20 people, I would say,
Yeah.
who have, you know, been at least on and off in their attendance. You know, like I think this group, it's never maxed out at like a really high number, but I mean, I feel like we could certainly do better than before. All right, well, I'm gonna move ahead, and I'm not sure if everyone has had a chance to meet Gabby Jurassic, but she's with our communications and community engagement team at DPD, and is here to give an update on We Will.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for including me today. And as Brian mentioned, I am with the communications and engagement team at DPD. I've been with the city for just under a year, so still learning the ropes, but we've been doing a lot of work specifically on We Will Chicago. So I was just curious, have folks in this group heard of We Will Chicago before, or is this not something that you're familiar with yet?
Yes,
I don't recall offhand hearing about it.
Okay,
I have.
great.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
Okay, well, perfect. So We Will Chicago, if you want to go to the next slide, Brian. We Will Chicago is an ambitious 3-year process to create a citywide plan for the future of Chicago. So you may be familiar with doing neighborhood plans, or like the planning study that's happening on the Altenheim line. But this is, there hasn't been a citywide plan since the 1960s for the entire city of Chicago. So what we're hoping to do through this process is to establish some formal guidelines that, you know, the entire city can kind of follow, not necessarily just individual neighborhoods. And so, you know, there's things like housing in Chicago that you really cannot just address on a neighborhood specific level. You know, you need to bring that up to a citywide scale to kind of look at the entire region and say, you know, where is housing available? Where should housing be available? That things like that, you know, other things like businesses, where are businesses in certain areas and not in certain areas. And so this is kind of a way to kind of take a little bit of a step back from the neighborhood level and see what are things that we can kind of standardize across the city. So one thing we could do is create criteria and metrics for public policy that are kind of consistent across the entire city. You know, we can formalize standards for neighborhood plans and regional plans. There's the possibility of aligning city budgets and capital projects with the policy priorities that kind of come out of this project. There's also, you know, we may find new ways to create public financing tools like the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund or Small Business Improvement Fund, different types of grants and things that the city could be doing. And we also want to talk about standardizing community engagement. So, you know, these roundtables are very unique in that they are on this neighborhood basis, and there's a lot of, you know, monthly interaction with city staff. So, you know, there's questions about, do we want to try to take that model to the rest of the city? Are there other priority areas that we need to be looking at for how we're engaging with the public? So next slide. So this whole process started pretty much late 2020. I think it was around kind of October of 2020. And there were kind of smaller focus groups that were put together with the help of the Metropolitan Planning Council and other community partners and city departments. And they kind of came up with this framework for the plan. So there are 2 principles of We Will Chicago, which were equity and resiliency. And I'll get into the definition of a little bit what those are. And then there's themes. These can be a little bit dense, so we're not going to go necessarily into these all today, but there's historical reckoning and trust building, the evaluation of equity impacts, community engagement, accountability, and then interagency cross collaboration. And then we have 7 pillars. So if you want to look at the pillars on the next slide. Oh, sorry, those are coming down. So there's 7 pillars, which we'll get to. So first we have what the definition of equity is. It's both an outcome and a process that results in fair and just access to opportunity and resources that provide everyone the ability to thrive. And then resiliency is, if you want to go to the next one. Resiliency is the ability of individuals, institutions, businesses, and systems within the community to survive, adapt, and grow based on chronic stresses or shocks to its experience. So a resilient city is not only expected to perform well in good times, but also recover quickly after challenges. And those challenges could be like our current public health challenge with COVID. It could be things like climate change, public safety, all those types of things. Next slide. So these are the 7 pillars of We Will. And they're basically topic areas that we have organized teams around to kind of study in more depth. So these 7 pillars are arts and culture, which is kind of self-explanatory, economic development, which includes, job creation, how do we support businesses, and, neighborhood commercial activity, environment, climate, and energy, which talks about, how do we protect and maintain environment and resources like rivers, lakes, how do we have our nature kind of connection and ensure that we have healthy outcomes for people in those areas that of the city that may have different types of environmental stresses. Housing and neighborhoods, which is about obviously housing and access to affordable housing, but also how is a neighborhood structured? What types of resources and assets are in your neighborhood? Lifelong learning. So this is about both, the classic education from, preschool all the way through university, but also the learning that we have amongst our peers, a generational idea exchange with our elders. So, what types of skill training and things can happen in both traditional and non-traditional settings. There's public health and safety, which is both about, the physical wellness of residents, but also mental health and physical safety. So, that goes into reducing violence, domestic violence or gun violence, approaches that kind of work within that overall holistic public health framework. And then the last one is transportation and infrastructure. Transportation is, how do we get around, whether that's on public transportation or driving or on bicycles and walking. And then infrastructure is obviously our bridges and streets, and also things like high-speed internet access. Next slide. I'll go back one. Oh, this one. So, so this is kind of the basic structure of how We Will is working. We have these, at the bottom, these research teams. We also have a number of community partners that we're working with who are on these research teams to help us get the message and engage residents across the city. Hopefully this summer we'll be having street ambassadors who will be going out into the community and, asking people to take surveys, educating them about what We Will is and getting all of their feedback on this plan and the process. We also have a website, wewillchicago.com, that's collecting feedback 24/7. Then we have an advisory committee of our other organizations who are kind of providing overall guidance and looking to see if there are themes or things that kind of cross the cut pillars. So, if you're talking about environment and you're also talking about public health, those things can really overlap. So they're helping to kind of mold some of those cross-cutting themes together. And then we have a city interagency committee, so that this is really talking about connectivity between all of the parts of the city. So, the CTA, the CHA, the police and fire departments, is DPD working with those groups? And so these are kind of representatives who are giving us perspective from all of those parts of kind of our governmental structure. And then at the top, we will have mayoral review of this plan. The alderman will hopefully review it and approve it through city council, and also through kind of the commission review, which are the Chicago Plan Commission and a number of other ones as well. Next slide. So this is kind of where we are right now. 2022 is going to be the year of engagement. So our pillar teams at this moment, this next week is our, I think it'll be our 10th meeting, is in the process of actually drafting recommendations of policy ideas and objectives and goals for the city. So by June, that's all going to be compiled into a document that we're going to take as a draft out to the public and say, hey, we really want your input on all of these things that have been written up. Do you agree with this approach? Do you disagree? So pretty much June through October, we're going to be collecting lots of public input and then taking that feedback back to our teams and saying, you know, this are things we need to adjust, or we missed these things. So then hopefully by 2023, we will have a final version of the plan that will actually go in front of City Council and all of the commissions and things for review. The public will again have opportunities for feedback and hopefully implementation. Next slide. So kind of how can you get involved in this process if you're interested? We will be having some surveys actually, hopefully in February, which are kind of talking about the plan objectives. So like, what are the goals of this plan going to be? And we want to circulate that and get community input, not just with the roundtable, but with all of your networks that you have, so that we can kind of get a lot of feedback and, you know, make adjustments before we go through this big drafting process and take the bigger document to the public. So then this summer, as I mentioned, we'll be having street teams that are kind of going out to a lot of events. So if you're working with an organization that has some big public events that you'd like us to be at, you know, we'd love to come and talk to your community about We Will. And so please, you know, you can email wewill@cityofchicago.org with any of those types of requests, and I'll get back to you about setting up some meetings with that. If you'd like to also kind of have a smaller group setting, we offer some meeting in a box materials where you can get together with a block club or with the, you know, the Chamber of Commerce in your community, or just a group of friends. And you can all kind of talk about, we have some kind of discussion guides and activities where you can write up responses from your group and get that to us, and we'll take all of the comments that you provide and give them to our research teams. And also you can go to our website and explore all the stuff that's there. We've got kind of reports that you can read on how far, you know, what have the research teams been doing this whole time. And you can also comment on and share your ideas on the pillars. So thanks so much. That's it.
Gabby, do you want me to pull up, do you want me to put that question into a poll for?
Yeah, you know, if you know, because we have a smaller group, maybe we can just, if you have, you know, we just wanted to get a sense of which of the pillars was most interesting to the group. And so if you have the poll active, I guess we could put it up, but otherwise, we can just.
I think I can type it up really quick here. Apologies, you did ask me to do this.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Should we do this like a pick one or like pick?
Yeah, it's just a pick one. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well here. Copy this in really quick. And then if anybody else has any questions right now or like to raise any comments or points about the We Will Chicago plan.
This is Deborah. This seems to align with the through the engagement process with that budget that was put forth, because it looks like these pillars. I just remember going to a couple of the meetings, and this seems to be aligned with when we were trying to prioritize the how resources will be allocated. Was that done with that in mind? With this in mind?
I'd have to check in with the mayor's office on that, but I think it, you know, it might have been, because this has been kind of in process, as I mentioned, from kind of late 2020, and then the pillars were kind of created by last March, February and March, I think is when we released them. So about a year ago. So yeah, I think you're exactly right, though. This idea is like, how would these pillars kind of align with budgets and that type of thing? So this is type of a exercise for us to start asking those questions and understand where our community's priorities are, not just for the next fiscal year, but, you know, long term, because these plans, if they could last for, you know, we're not really going to see the impact of them for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years from now. But yeah, that's exactly right.
So I see the interagency component to it. So how do you pull in, what's the thought around pulling in the state and the federal government in, you know, terms of those initiatives that seem to, or plans, if you will, that seem to link to what we will is?
So this plan is kind of existing on its own level right now. You know, we're trying to have a clean slate and start. I can share a list of all of the people who've been involved in the process so far. And, you know, they may have had experience on the federal and state and county level. We are planning on doing presentations with this, you know, plan once we have a draft for kind of all of those other types of elected officials and government agencies, just so that they're kind of familiar with what this is and what it's basically deciding, you know, what are the priorities for the city of Chicago. And, you know, it remains to be seen how that will kind of interact necessarily, but they, you know, this is kind of us putting out there a document that says, you know, this is what matters to our residents. And hopefully it serves as a guide for other types of planning activities. Chicago is actually unique in that we haven't had this happen since over 50 years, but there are other cities like Los Angeles and New York and Boston that require you to do this every 5 years or something like that. So this is a huge undertaking that really hasn't been done before. But yeah, that you bring up a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is great. I would love to get a copy of the PowerPoint, but I see all of these funding opportunities that are coming out from the state and the feds and of course the city. And it's like, how does this all align? Or how do we work together to make sure that we're not, we're doing the work on behalf of the city, but we're not really doing it at cross purposes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that's a great question that I will bring to the rest of the group.
I think that's a great question, Deborah. And, you know, I mean, as somebody, you know, if I can step onto like your side of the fence here for a second, you know, as somebody who coordinates with folks across multiple departments within the city government, as well as like sister agencies like CPS and CTA and, you know, the Park District. I mean, there's a lot happening right now. There's a lot of funding that's available. There's a lot of development that's happening, investment from the private side. So to have something that we could like look up to as, you know, a framework for how we, you know, strategically like, you know, move ahead with our initiatives and the priorities and, you know, neighborhoods, the many neighborhoods across the city. I think that, you know, this could really be a guiding and helpful document. Folks, please feel free to continue the discussion. I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll here. Hopefully you all are able to access that. Did you see it pop up on your screen? Okay, I see some responses here. So I know we have like a smaller group here, but still, you know, it's informative and helpful to see what folks are responding to. So I think you should only be able to respond to one. So, all right, we got
Our
12
hope
out
is
of 12.
Oh, sweet. Our hope is that, you know, we can come to another roundtable down, you know, the line in a couple weeks or, you know, a few months away and have kind of really a deeper conversation about some of these pillars because they are full of really important topics. And so this is just kind of the beginning introduction to, you know, future opportunities to really dig into this.
Yeah, I was encouraged that we have another chance to do this so we can get some more input from the community in terms of which pillar is more important.
Yes, definitely.
Hey, Brenda.
Hey, Brian.
Thanks for joining us. We just put a, oh, I don't know if you'll be able to access it. You may have joined right
Too
after
I see
oh,
a poll. Is it the untitled poll?
yeah,
Okay.
sorry. I tried to go back and edit the title of it, but I felt like I was worried I was going to screw it up. But Gabby from DPD, Gabby Jurassic, she just gave a presentation on the We Will Chicago citywide plan, and these are the 7 pillars that are part of that plan. And so this is kind of just a basic question of, like, you know, if you had to pick one that you were the most sort of interested in, which one would that be?
Done. Voted.
All right, nice.
My apologies to you all for being delayed.
Hey,
With so many meetings
better
today.
late than not at all.
Thanks.
Are you going to share the results, Brian?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, good call.
I'm just curious.
No. I thought everyone, I was thinking everyone
Yes.
could see it, actually.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Rodney. I'm not, we usually use that Mentimeter as opposed to doing the polls in Zoom, so I'm kind of a dummy about that stuff.
Interesting.
But yes,
Cool.
not keeping these confidential.
Cool.
So yeah, economic development, public health and safety. I think that's pretty consistent with what we've been hearing in these meetings. Here are themes that we talk about quite frequently, as well as transportation too, and housing. So these are all pretty consistent themes that folks you know, raise here, and that we know that we want to respond to from the DPD point of view, for sure.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Gabby. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back, and I think the group here would be interested in seeing how this, you know, really big, important project continues to develop, and you know, future opportunities to get involved with it as well. So, okay, I'm going to take down our poll here, and I'm going to give the floor to Jim Harbin from DPD. I think everybody knows Jim. It's maybe been a little while since he's been with the group here, but definitely a familiar face.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. For those, and I do know mostly everyone on the call, but for those who I haven't met, had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Jim Harbin. I'm a deputy commissioner here with the Department of Planning and Development, and happy to share once again information about one of the resources that is coming from the federal government. Deborah, this is some of that alignment that you alluded to in terms of how we support some of those pillars. The Chicago Recovery Plan Community Development Grant, or as we like to call it, Chi Recovery Grant, is one in which we start sharing with the community back in January 6th of this year. We literally had over 1,500 people registered for the webinar that we put together that day. We, I think, closed out with a little over 700 people actually participating in the webinar. And so as a result, and you can go to the next slide, Brian. We were sharing a particular grant program that is aligned with what the Department of Planning and Development has focused on, particularly over the course of the last couple of years, and particularly with as part of the Invest South and West initiative. So today, I'm going to just give many of you a brief overview. I'm sure many of you were on that call that day, but for those of you who weren't, it's an opportunity to kind of get introduced to this new grant program. I am actually going to give and provide an overview for the grant, talk about eligibility. We're going to talk about the process of engaging this particular resource, and even tips in terms of what you may need to be paying attention to if you are interested in providing an application. Next slide. Keep going. So part of what Deborah was asking, Deborah Wesley, is there some alignment taking place based on this plan that the city is about to embark on? And by the way, you know, Gabriella suggested that it was over 50 years, pardon me, since the city has done a plan like this. I actually heard someone suggest that a plan like this was not or has not been conducted in the city of Chicago since Hee Haw was on Saturday nights at 6:30. You know, so that kind of give you a sense in terms of how long it's been since this plan has been, a plan like this has been crafted in the city. What this 1.2 billion, and I slowed down for a reason, $1.2 billion in new investments for the city residents in the future is literally trying to align with some of those pillars. We look at it in two particular categories. One, economic and equitable, particularly equitable economic recovery, and things like community development, small business, community climate investments, arts, tourism, parks, and infrastructure. And then there's another tier or pillar that really is focused on thriving and particularly safe communities. Things like housing, assistance to families, violence prevention, health and wellness, youth opportunities, homelessness, and environmental justice. We think kind of aligns with that group. Can you go to the next slide, Brian? So no, go back one more. So our focus, the Department of Planning's focus is going to be in the tier that you see highlighted: community development, small business and workforce support, community climate investments, and we're actually going to be tying into arts and culture and tourism and the tourism industry. Other departments are going to be looking at other particular categories under these tiers. And so you're going to see additional dollars come from those departments based on what their focus is. Our focus is here. We have a little over north of $50 million to go ahead and initiate this particular grant program. And now I'm going to show you what we're focused on. Next slide. So what you're going to find is that those of you who are familiar with the Small Business Improvement Fund, our Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, are going to see a lot of similarities with this particular grant program. But we're still looking at the same thing. We're still looking at catalytic local development, and we still want to strengthen our corridors, enhance neighborhood vitality, and we still want to drive equitable investments. Next slide. So as I suggested, you're going to see a lot of similarities here, guys. The grant uses are very similar to that SPIF program and that NOF program. We're still looking at expansion and renovation of existing businesses. We're still going to support businesses that want to start new locations or start their very first locations. We still want to support new construction at vacant properties throughout the city. There is even a two-tiered approach to this particular program, as is the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. There's a small grant track for those businesses that are going to be requesting grant dollars under $250,000. And there's going to be a track for those applicants looking for support of over $250,000. I think the thing that needs to be noted is that this particular program can support 75% of a total project's cost, or 75% of the eligible cost for a particular project. And I'm going to go in more detail about that later. Next slide. So who is this application open to? Well, a couple of things that are similar to those two programs that I just alluded to. One, we're certainly looking for commercial property. We're certainly looking for manufacturing property and properties that are manufacturing goods for the city. So those two mirror the NOF program. We do have a program, we do have now as part of the eligibility, mixed use property, and sometimes it's a little confusing what that term means. If you can think about the profile of a building where there's commercial space on the bottom and residential units on the top, we just opened up, or we just launched the tweaking of an existing program to allow us to have support for those type of renovations. This grant is going to do the same thing. In other words, if you're looking for a project that has that commercial component on the bottom and residential on the top, this grant can support that. We still want to support business owners and entrepreneurs, property owners, community developers. And here's where it gets really interesting. Here's where it gets different. One of the things that most of our grant programs had in common is that they were geographically based. And most of those grants usually were looking at areas in the city that have been historically disinvested. This particular program is different. This program is citywide. So no matter where you are in the city of Chicago, your geography allows you to be eligible for this particular program. Some of those expenses are going to include the same, the usual suspects for the other two programs, exterior and interior renovations, build outs, acquisition can be part of this particular program, as well as site preparation and demolition. One of the things we're very proud of in terms of what we tweak with the other two programs is that architectural fees and engineering fees can be and are now eligible for these programs. And the rest is a rogues gallery of things that are eligible for the program, like roofing, masonry work, mechanical systems, and security systems. The analogy I like to use is that if you pick up a building, if you could pick up a building and turn it upside down and shake it, whatever fell out of that building, whatever wasn't attached to the building would not be eligible. Everything that's stuck to the building is what we would deem as eligible for this particular program. Next slide. So let's summarize where we are. First of all, locations are not limited to specific corridors, specific TIF districts, specific geographies. This grant is open to the entire city of Chicago. Light manufacturing and mixed use residential projects are eligible for this program when they were before limited to separate other programs. You can have these be eligible for this particular program. And vanilla box in the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant program, one had to signal in one's application, if you were going to do the renovation of a commercial space, who that tenant was going to be, who that intended leasee was going to be. In this case, you can do the renovation on a particular project and you don't have to necessarily have that tenant in mind. Next slide. Okay, that's a little small.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
sure.
okay.
Here, hold on a
That's all right.
sec. Let me
So I can
take a
talk
look.
through that, though, Brian. I can talk through it. So in terms of the selection process, we're going to be looking at it in the same way that we have looked at other grant programs. So one, we're going to be looking at catalytic projects that with strong local impact, like job creations, amenities, and services that benefit the community. We're still going to be paying attention to places in the city that has had historical disinvestment. And so we're not going to be ruling those out. We're just adding now other locations in the city. And then projects that demonstrate momentum or projects that are ready to go right now, projects that are looking to break ground this year. We want to flag those projects because, again, the ideal of this is to connect with investments that people are looking to do now. And if they are ready and this grant now provides an opportunity for those grants or those projects to take place, we want to certainly help support that. And then site control is preferred. And we're being very intentional with language here. But yes, when we say preferred, we mean if you own it, if you have a signed lease or contract, yeah, your projects will more than likely become prioritized because you are signaling that you're ready to go. Now, does that mean that you can't utilize this program if you don't have those things in place? Absolutely not. We still encourage you to be considering putting in an application, but we are looking for projects that are ready to go today or right now. Next slide, Brian. So the application process is one in which there's two things to kind of keep note of. One, there are two portals. One place to get it, but there's an opportunity for you to either apply for the small grant or grants that are looking for under 250 and under, or a large grant portal in which your project is going to require grants or support of over $250,000. Now, the application deadlines can be misleading, and I want to make sure I walk you through what this means. We are under what's called a rolling application. So we're going to be taking applications for the good part of the year. What we're going to be doing on the 31st and on the 10th, and some date that we're going to set late summer, is taking the applications we have to date on the 31st, and subsequently the applications we have between the 31st and the 10th, and subsequently between the 10th and what date we set in the summer. Those applications will be then taken offline and will begin their evaluation process. So even if you turn in an application on February 1st, you're still eligible for the program, but you are now going to be in that batch that are going to start that evaluation process on March 10th, and subsequently the same in late summer. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about this, and I'm just going to make sure you get the meat and potatoes of this particular slide. The small grants and the large grants have one location that you can go to, which is the chicago.gov/Shy Recovery Grant. And by the way, we're calling it Shy Recovery Grant internally in the Department of Planning. If you Google just Shy Recovery Grant, it will land you at the page where this website lives. Next slide. So subsequently, with the large grant program, it's the same portal. However, once you begin to start your application, you will see where there will be a classification for you to go to small or go to large in order to submit your application. So a couple of tips, real quick tips. Project readiness, as I alluded before, we are certainly looking to prioritize those projects that are doing a couple of things. One, they're demonstrating clear site control. We have questions embedded in our pre-application to kind of help you better understand if you are ready for that or not. We're looking for your plan for construction in terms of what kind of schedule you've put together for yourself in terms of starting and finishing up your project. We are looking for projects that have already done some cost estimation. And as a matter of fact, you strengthen your application if you demonstrate that you've had more than one subcontractor or more than one general contractor look at your project and help you come to a clear consensus in terms of what your costs are going to be. And then equity. We're looking from everything from the contractors that you are selecting in terms of making sure they are diverse. We're certainly looking at participation from ownership in terms of diversity. We want to make sure that this is something that is certainly going to be equitable across the city of Chicago. Next slide. Community engagement, as you well know, is very important to the Department of Planning. Every community that we engage in has done some type of planning. And so we want to ask and make sure there's an opportunity for that applicant to demonstrate that they are aware of those plans and how their project aligns with those plans. Certainly applicants demonstrating that they've done community engagement, whether it be with local community-based organizations or local elected officials, in terms of understanding that they have interest in investing in that community and the type of support that they have garnered or marshaled as a result of that engagement. And then corridor conditions. We want to make sure you are aware of where your project is and how it's going to impact that community based on its services and goods. I like to tell the story. A couple of years ago, we had an applicant literally put in this application that they would be the only sandwich shop going into the area. And as a part of our due diligence and simple research on Google, we determined that there were multiple sandwich shops on that very same block. You don't necessarily want to do that type of due diligence. You want to make sure that you are clearly aware of the impact your project is going to have on a particular community. Next slide. And then lastly, design. And if you've been engaged with the Department of Planning over the last 2 years, you know that this has become an emerging component of what the Department of Planning is trying to do. We actually believe that design matters just as much as the investment. In other words, if we make an investment in communities and it doesn't look like it, we don't think we're enjoying and having the benefit of that impact if that investment doesn't look and is visceral to that community. So part of the things we're going to be looking for is equity and inclusion. Who's working on your project? Do they look like people who live in that community? We're looking for innovation in terms of creativity, in terms of what those designs may be. And if you're solving a particular problem in the community, we want to help support that. Sense of place and celebrating the particular communities in terms of where your project is going to land. How does it strengthen the corridor of those communities? We're looking for that and are scoring as a result. Sustainability, sustainable models. We are supporting and want to encourage projects that are committed to environmental, cultural, and financial longevity. And then communication. What is your project at the end of the day signal to the community? Is it something that demonstrates that there was a solid, well thought out investment, or is that something else? And we certainly want to avoid that something else. So we're looking for projects that foster design appreciation and responding to community needs. Next slide. So one of the things that I certainly want to signal on this call, and Rodney, this is something that's aimed directly at you and the CDC there in North Lawndale. There are resources for applicants, particularly in North Lawndale, and we have this type of support across the entire city. There's a portal, Community Development Grant Resources, where you can literally link up with the local community organizations in that area, like New Covenant. There's links to materials to assist with enhancing your readiness, demonstrating your feasibility, construction planning, how you demonstrate your catalytic impact, and also business planning. We want to make sure that you guys are well armed with resources in order to help put your best foot forward. And let me stop right there by saying this. You know, those dates out there sometimes are misleading. It's not with the intent of forcing people to get applications in before a certain deadline. It's literally there, and the reason why we have the rolling applications is there to demonstrate that we're looking for you to put your best foot forward. And you may be in a position to do that between now and the 31st of January. If not, it's okay. We're not encouraging you to meet that deadline, but we're encouraging you to understand is that there are going to be opportunities for you to put your application in all year. And in that way, we hope that it allows for people to do the due diligence that their projects deserve. Next slide. So with that, I am going to take some questions. I don't know if you have the slide after this, Brian, but it talks about it demonstrates, there it is. It demonstrates the portal. You can go to chicago.gov/Shy Recovery Grant to get all the information, including this particular deck. You get, there's a copy of the webinar that we conducted on January 6th. You can get contact with the not only the application, but also the community-based organizations that can help support. And there's also a portal that not only has where you can email questions at dpd@cityofchicago.org, but also we've got a list of frequently asked questions, so you can see where some of your colleagues have asked similar type questions and the answers that the department has crafted. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you guys for having me today.
Jim, did I understand you say we can get a copy of the deck from this site?
Yeah, the site has this presentation
Okay.
on it. You won't have me necessarily speaking on that, which is probably a good thing.
No.
but yes, the presentation is on that site.
Awesome.
So, Rodney, I always send out the recordings of the meeting.
Okay,
and
great.
a PDF of the slide deck too, so you'll get that by tomorrow. At the
Yeah,
latest.
I just want to be sure because I had to step away for a minute, but I also think there's some very pertinent information that we can share with small business owners and community from this deck. So I want to make sure we circulate this widely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So with all the committees that are under NLCCC and New Covenant is our fiscal agent,
Mm-hmm.
can more than one committee apply for the grant for whatever their purpose is?
Yeah, without necessarily, bombarding you with questions, Rochelle, in terms of detailing that out, my short answer is going to be yes.
Okay.
Put in an application. Let us kind of get to a point where we need that detail. I would rather you hesitate let me put it a different way. I would rather you err on the side of submitting the application and we kind of, for whatever reason, figure out you're good, than you not submitting it because it wasn't clear in terms of what you're asking, if that makes sense.
Okay.
How you
Anyone
doing,
else?
Deputy Commissioner?
Hey, how are you?
How you doing? Good, sir. This is Obai with Equiticity.
How you
Nice
doing?
to, all is well. Nice to cross paths with you again.
Yes.
You know, we talked in detail about our interests in the stretch of Pulaski between 19th and about 22nd Street, and bringing the Go Hub to that area. Given this grant opportunity and the Chicago Prize, we have reimagined what we want to do with that project. So we want to combine the Go Hub with Bike Force, which is a workforce development program teaching young people around these emerging transportation technologies, and a bicycle manufacturing worker co-op. We're hoping to potentially establish partnerships with many of the organizations here on this call, and perhaps others. And given the focus on manufacturing, my question is bicycle manufacturing in particular, as a worker co-op. My question is, will that potentially fit into what you describe as light manufacturing? Or given that we want to do bicycle manufacturing, will we need to look at some more industrial parts of North Lawndale?
Yeah, just given what I know about your project, this particular program would fit, I think, what you're looking to do.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to put it in an application.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir.
Anyone else? Brian, thank you so much.
I had a quick question. Sorry, I wasn't
Hey,
fast
Linda,
enough.
how are you? Long time no see.
Hey, thanks, James. You have been an angel in helping us get our NOF grants through, so we appreciate you. My question is, because this is different from the way in which this funding is different from NOF and from other funds, that people from other geographic areas can apply. I'm curious about what becomes the priority. Let's say that you have two competing entities, where's the value in terms of making that final decision?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think you're gonna find a lot of it is the same. The intent of most of our other programs, Brenda, as you well know, has been almost ridiculously biased towards the south and west sides of Chicago. That's not to say that there are areas on the north and northwest sides of Chicago that still could use some support. So two things we're looking for. One, how readily buttoned up is your project? And you know a little bit about that. You got to put together great applications that demonstrate you know what you're doing, you're ready to go, and that you can get to the finish line. And you'll be surprised. Part of what we're challenged with as a city is to help people get over the finish line. And sometimes that's not only just a novice, by the way, that could be seasoned people. Some of this stuff can be sometimes a little bit complicated, as you probably could attest to. So that's one thing. But yeah, we're still looking on the south side. We're still not going to neglect that. And now we have as a luxury a program that kind of expands what it means to be eligible. But we still have the Small Business Improvement Fund. We still have the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. As a matter of fact, this program now allows us to add more businesses to the mix. As you know, SPIF, or our Small Business Improvement Fund, is limited on funding. NOF is limited on funding. Now we've just got another program that does the same thing. So it actually gives us an opportunity to expand projects like the ones on the south and west sides of Chicago to get more into the mix. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was helpful. Is there an actual scorecard that will be used?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, we are actually fine-tuning that scorecard as we speak. We, as a city, literally, and I'm going to get bopped aside the head for saying this, but we wanted to get the grant out the door, if that makes sense. And, you know, some of the details in terms of our scoring rubric, we're bringing a lot of what we do with SPIF and NOF to the table. But yeah, we got to tweak it a little bit because this is a little different. And we're still refining that, if that helps.
Don't give away the secrets, Jim, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, well, listen, I'm happy. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. If anybody has any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And again, I encourage everyone to go on that portal and get familiar with the grant program, whether it's for yourself or to be able to help us echo that this particular resource is available. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jim.
Thanks, James. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, this is definitely, you know, it's good to have another opportunity out there, even though, you know, we've got some, you know, several programs that are options. You know, the more that are out there, you know, the better chances there are for the, you know, businesses in North Lawndale and communities all over the west side and the city. So yeah, thanks. And yeah, everyone, if you have follow-up questions, definitely reach out to Jim. He's really responsive, and I'll also be sending around this information probably tomorrow, the recording of the meeting. You didn't get a chance to see the whole thing. And another thing, just I know that we're over time here, but you can expect a announcement for the Roosevelt Costner RFP. We're looking at end of this month, so we're pretty much already at the end of the month. So hopefully in a matter of days here, there will be something coming out announcing the date announcement. And I know that everybody's been really interested in that. And in our next meeting, we will share the survey results on the roundtable survey about how we could improve this engagement format. And I'm not sure what else we may have lined up for a month from now, but you know, yeah, we'll be coming back and engaging with you then, and maybe some new information to share on other things as well. So I appreciate everyone's time today, and yeah, we'll follow up with you a month from now. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.